Ted Bundy's story is both terrifying and fascinating, a tale of a man whose charm and intelligence helped him commit unimaginable crimes. He's one of America's most infamous serial killers, remembered not only for the brutality of his actions, but also for the complexity of his personality, a mix of charisma and cruelty that allowed him to evade justice for years. Ted was born Theodore Robert Cowell on November 24, 1946, in Burlington, Vermont, and his childhood was surrounded by secrets. His mother, Louise Cowell, gave birth to him out of wedlock, which was highly stigmatized at the time. To avoid the scandal, Ted was raised to believe that his mother was his sister and that his grandparents were his parents. His real father's identity was kept from him, adding a layer of mystery and confusion to his early life. As he grew older, he found out the truth, and many believed that the impact of this deception had a lasting effect on him. Though outwardly charming and well-liked, people close to him noted signs of his inability to connect emotionally. He showed early signs of a fascination with control and manipulation, hints of the darkness that would later consume him. Bundy's life as a young adult appeared relatively normal. He was handsome, intelligent, and outgoing, traits that made him popular among his peers. He attended the University of Puget Sound and later transferred to the University of Washington, where he studied psychology. Many people who knew him described him as polite and engaging, and on the surface, he seemed like a typical college student. But beneath this pleasant exterior, Ted was harboring disturbing urges that would soon lead him down a violent path. In 1974, young women in the Pacific Northwest began to disappear under mysterious circumstances. Ted's first confirmed murder was Linda Ann Healy, a 21-year-old college student. She vanished from her apartment in Seattle, leaving behind blood-stained bedding and no trace of her whereabouts. This marked the beginning of Ted's killing spree, one that would span several years and states. Following Healy's disappearance, more cases followed, and a pattern began to emerge, but the victims were often young, attractive women with long, dark hair parted in the middle. Ted used a clever technique to approach his victims. He would feign injury or disability, wearing a sling or using crutches, and ask his victims for help with something seemingly simple, like carrying books or loading items into his car. This act of vulnerability was disarming and made the women feel safe enough to approach him. Once alone with his victims, Ted would overpower them and take them to isolated locations, where he would kill them in brutal fashion. As the police investigated the growing number of disappearances, they had no idea they were dealing with the same person across different locations. Ted was mobile, and his crimes stretched across multiple states, making it difficult for law enforcement agencies to connect the cases. After a series of murders in Washington, Ted moved to Utah in 1974, where he continued his education in law school at the University of Utah. Yet, despite the move, he did not stop his killing spree. Young women continued to vanish under eerily similar circumstances. Soon, similar cases began appearing in neighboring states like Colorado and Idaho, leaving authorities frustrated and communities in fear. In 1975, Ted's string of luck started to run out. He was pulled over by the police in Utah for a routine traffic stop. When officers searched his car, they found burglary tools, including a crowbar, handcuffs, and a ski mask, raising their suspicions. Ted was able to talk his way out of immediate trouble, but this was the beginning of the end for him. Soon after, he was linked to the attempted kidnapping of a young woman, and authorities began to suspect that he might be behind the string of disappearances in the region. Ted was taken into custody, but even behind bars, his cunning and resourcefulness were evident. In 1977, while awaiting trial, Ted managed to escape from custody twice. The first time, he jumped from a second-story courthouse window during a hearing in Colorado, injuring himself but escaping into the wilderness. He was recaptured a few days later, but his determination to evade justice was unshakable. Later that year, he managed a second escape. This time, he climbed through a hole in the ceiling of his jail cell in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, and went on the run once again. His escape made headlines and escalated fears across multiple states. Following his escape, Ted traveled to Florida, where his killing spree reached new levels of brutality. On January 15, 1978, he broke into the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University. In a horrifying attack, he brutally beat and strangled 4 women, killing 2 of them instantly. The crime scene was chaotic and blood-soaked, the attack bearing all the hallmarks of Ted's rage. Only a few weeks later, he abducted and killed 12-year-old Kimberly Leach in what would become one of the most heartbreaking crimes of his spree. These final crimes shocked the nation and left the public desperate for his capture. In February 1978, Ted's luck finally ran out. He was apprehended after being stopped for driving a stolen vehicle. This time, the authorities were determined to keep him locked up for good. As he awaited trial, his case attracted a massive media following. Ted, never one to shy away from the spotlight, decided to represent himself in court, a move that was as daring as it was egotistical. In the courtroom, he showcased his intelligence and charm, even proposing to his girlfriend, Carol Ann Boone, in front of the judge. Boone accepted, illustrating how Ted's charisma could still influence those around him, despite the horror of his crimes. In July 1979, Ted Bundy was found guilty of multiple murders and sentenced to death. He would spend nearly a decade on death row, confessing to over 30 murders in hopes of delaying his execution. Investigators believed he was responsible for even more, though they may never know the true number. Bundy's confessions provided haunting details of his crimes, as he recounted the ways he would stalk, deceive, and ultimately overpower his victims. He seemed to revel in sharing these stories, prolonging his life by offering bits and pieces of information. Finally, on January 24, 1989, Ted Bundy was executed in the electric chair at Florida State Prison. Crowds gathered outside to celebrate his death, chanting and holding signs. His execution brought a sense of closure to many, though the trauma and horror of his crimes left an enduring impact on everyone involved. Ted Bundy's case transformed how law enforcement approached serial killers, leading to changes in investigative techniques, especially in handling crimes that span multiple jurisdictions. It highlighted the dangers of relying on appearances and emphasized the need for caution when dealing with strangers. His story remains a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath a charming smile and a friendly demeanor.